Good evening. It's Pastor Randy from Faith Independent here in Hardin, Montana. I am coming to you this evening with just a few short thoughts from my garage. This is where I come to study in peace. This is where I come to meditate. This is where I come to reflect. And just a few words tonight to maybe get you to reflect. I have heard for a month or so, I'll be glad when we get back to normal. As I preached a couple of weeks ago, I don't want to get back to normal. I want to go forward from this thing different. What has been going on in my head over the last few days is we're always praying for deliverance from situations and circumstances. God, get me out of this. God, get me out of this situation. God, get me out of this predicament. God, get me out of this place where I am. What's been banging around in my head for the last few days is not so much, God, get me out of this, but God, what do you want me to get out of this? I've looked at the life of Jeremiah many times. He was called a weeping prophet on a number of occasions. But I think we could just as easily call him the praying prophet. Jeremiah was continually praying for himself, for the people of Israel, for the situations and circumstances they were going through. Oftentimes during the book of Jeremiah, God would tell him not to pray for certain people, for certain situations, for certain things. I'm not so terribly sure that we should be praying to God to get us out of this as much as we should be praying, God, what do you want me to get out of this? I know in my own personal life, with us shutting down the church for a few weeks, we are back open, by the way. I'm coming to you tonight as the last video that I'll be doing from other places than the church. Our plans are to return to our normal Wednesday evening services at church. We've been doing our Sunday morning services at church for a few weeks now and having a great time. And so I believe it's time for us to resume our Wednesday evening services at church as well. I firmly believe that the church is one of the most essential businesses that we can have in operation. I have my own very strong opinions about this pandemic and all of the media fear-mongering and the way that our country has reacted to this. That's my own personal beliefs and my personal feelings toward all of this. My responsibility to the Church of God is to pastor, to get the message out. God, what do you want me to get out of this? My own personal life. God, what do you want me to get out of this? I believe the first thing that God wanted me to get out of this was to trust Him. Going into this with all kinds of churches shutting down and nobody being able to go to churches and things, what's going to happen to the offerings? What's going to happen to the membership? What's going to happen to the people who need their message from the Word? What's going to happen to the people who need the fellowship of other believers? What's going to happen? And my worry, because I am a worrier. And so I believe one of the things that God wanted me to get out of this was to trust Him. I have been able to put all of our messages on the internet by Facebook or YouTube or whatever medium you happen to be watching. We've also had people come to church while I was recording. We've had people that I have ministered to house. We've had people that I've gone to their houses and ministered to. I believe God wanted me to get out of this to trust Him. To trust Him with my finances. To trust Him with my health. To trust Him with the health of our church, our people. I agree that people that are at high risk should be careful. I agree that we should be, if you've never washed your hands, you should probably wash your hands. But I think, and I hesitate to say this on camera, but I think this has been one major overreaction from our government, from our counties, from our individuals. Is the virus severe? Yeah. Is it serious? Yes. But so is the flu, so is pneumonia, so is diabetes, so is heart disease, so is obesity, so is car crashes, so is alcoholism, so is drug abuse, so is abortion. They're all serious. But we haven't shut down our country for any of those. We haven't shut down multiple businesses, people losing their livelihoods, people losing their source of income, people losing sometimes their lifetime savings. So my personal belief is this has been one big overreaction. So God, what do you want me to get out of this? I believe one of the things that God wanted me to get out of this was to trust Him. To trust Him with my own survival. To trust Him with the survival of those that I love. To trust Him with the survival of our church, our community, our local businesses. Just to trust God. Another thing that I believe God has wanted me to get out of this is realizing, as Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. Then shall ye call upon me, and ye shall go and pray unto me, and I will hearken unto you. And ye shall seek me and find me, when ye shall search for me with all of your heart." This pandemic has caused us to pray, has caused us to turn to the Lord. There's a verse that says, "And all the nations that forget God shall be turned into hell." And America has forgotten God. A lot of our churches have become routine. This has caused us to turn back to the Lord. In 2 Chronicles 7:14, very familiar verse, it says, "If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves, turn from our wicked ways, then we'll hear from heaven and He'll hear our land." I believe this pandemic is as much a message to the church as it is anyone else. I believe this is a time for the church to grow stronger. I believe this is a time for the church to stand up, to say that we're not going to be controlled by the government, that we're not going to be controlled by fear. This is just my thoughts. This is you don't have to agree with me, and that's okay. But these are things that I believe God has wanted me to get out of this. Instead of God getting me out of this, God, what do you want me to get out of this? And to trust Him and to turn to Him is some of the things that I think that God has wanted me to get from this. To be able to share the Word on camera. I am most uncomfortable on camera. I don't like what I say, how I look, how I appear, my articulation, my performance, my projection. I don't like it. I don't like being on the internet. I don't like being on camera. And so this is another way of God developing me to be able to share to anyone, anytime, anywhere. Through all kinds of different mediums, through all kinds of different avenues. This is a time that God is teaching me to pour my heart out to you, to look vulnerable, to have my opinion, to be judged for my opinion, to be critiqued, as many people will. And it's a time for me to overcome all of that and say, God, you said for me to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. There's no way physically here in Hardin, Montana, that I can reach the entire world, that I can preach to every creature. but by the means of the internet, by the means of that camera sitting in front of me, by the means of the microphone laying here on my knee, I can reach people that I would never even come in contact with. I can reach people with the good news of Jesus Christ. I can reach people, for whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. I can reach people with, I know the thoughts I think towards you. I think one of the other versions says, I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. I can get the word out that there is hope in God. Put your trust in God. You can't put your trust in the government. You can't put your trust in your jobs. You can't put your trust in your health, in your finances, in your 401k. But you can put your trust in God. You can take the time. Right now we've got time on our hands. I believe that's God wanting me to use my time. God, what do you want me to get out of this? I have built more decks, built more roads, built more playground equipment, built more things than I ever have in my life because I have time. But while I'm building, I'm able to think. I'm able to meditate. I've got scriptures playing. Most of the time I've got a pocket on my t-shirts and I have a speaker that I stick in my pocket and I listen to preaching, or I listen to the quotation of the word, or I listen to some religious thing going on. And so I'm taking the time to get acquainted with God. What is it God wants you to get out of this? Instead of you praying, God, get me out of this, maybe you should pray, like I did. God, what do you want me to get out of this? Just a simple thought from a crazy preacher here in Montana. And I know it doesn't always come across like I'd like for it to. But what I would like for you to do tonight maybe is just consider, God, whatever situation I'm in, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a financial situation, whether it's a health crisis, whether it's the death of a loved one, whether it's something breaking down, whether it's a car accident, whatever it is in yours and my life, God says in His Word in Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God and to them that are called according to His purpose. And so we know that everything that happens in our lives, God has a reason. So this has a reason. So my response to that should be, God, what do you want me to get out of this? If I have a sickness, if I have an accident, if I have a financial crisis, God, what do you want me to get out of this? I hope you'll ask yourself tonight the same question. What does God want me to get out of this? How does God want me to respond to this? What does God want me to go forward, learned from this, having learned from this? Just a few thoughts for you to consider. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you're ready to worship in your houses of worship on Sunday. Remember, the church is not the building. It's not the parking lot. The church is you and me. And whether you're able to gather in a church building, or whether you're having to gather in a parking lot, or by way of internet, or whatever way you're getting, gather. Worship the Lord. Prepare your heart. Prepare your mind for what word God has for you, because God has a word for you. Have a great week. This is Pastor Randy from Faith Independent here in Hart, Montana.